like to welcome you all this evening to join me in a good discussion. I really hope that you will share examples of what's working in your classrooms and in your school, what you're seeing, because we learn um, from each other as well as the resources I'm going to share tonight. So, our big question for the evening is how can we provide highly effective digital communication and collaboration tools um, and how to use them effectively. So we want to know how can we provide this learning experience for communication, collaboration, and what are the tools that we use to support this? So we're going to put these pieces of the puzzle together. This is actually our last um, webinar for EdTech in the Learning and Leadership webinar series. And so if you are taking this for PGI, on the Learning and Leadership website, there are directions for how to record your reflection about it. And I'm not sure if you have to apply something that you learn as well, but the directions for PGI credit are there. Some of you may be attending it as a participant in the EdTech Academy, and we ask that you do reflect about what you learned tonight, and if you would share one way that you apply what you learned as well as part of your EdTech evidence of what you've done to implement your digital age teaching and learning this year. So I asked you to kick off the discussion, and it's like crazy on the side. Um, that let's see, we've got folks from around our district. We've got middle school, high schools. I think I saw a couple elementary. Andrea is our guest here, so she was trying to go incognito, but she's claimed who she is in here, so we know it's Andrea. Is it Andrea? Yeah, Andrea Cousins at Heritage. So welcome. And so we're talking about how to do this digital communication and collaboration. Um, a Google presentation is awesome. I would love to know more about that, Deb. And I love that I hear a collaboration with the cyber school. So is it the Douglas County EDCSD? And what I'm picturing, not knowing what the content was in that Google presentation, we actually have used it with BRTs where everybody can have a different slide and can even have essential questions on there that people put their resources. Or one time we even did like a close activity where we were looking at some research from Michael Fullen, and rather than give everybody his 10 top tips for change agents, we gave them sentence stems or missing pieces. And then people filled in what they thought would make sense. And then we compared it to what Michael's actual message was. And so it was a great way to compare and contrast and to get to the essence of Michael Fullen's change agency. So that was a great one. And then, Deb, you're on fire tonight. You got another one with video conferencing, so the students could present their projects together at our own locations, and all the students who are watching shared. They shared. What I love that I'm hearing about this one is that you've got, instead of the deal being that every student stands in front and reads their PowerPoint to the class, I hear you using the tools to, it sounds like a back channel, kind of what we're doing right now, where the students who are watching it can have active dialogue and connections to what's being said. So that's exactly what we try to model whenever we have a back channel, is can we create that participatory culture that new information from a presenter is coming in and the learners are connecting to it in real time. So it's not the sit and get. It's got to be and actually, if we could help our students to stop and ask big questions, exactly like we're doing. So I don't even think you need me tonight. You guys are on fire with all of these examples. I'm going to give one more. Let's see. I am interested, Michelle. We talked in another webinar about the Google Hangouts, and one of the things we discovered was that teachers had different features in a Google Plus Hangout than the students did. And because of the webinar and the discussion we had with educators, we went back to IT and said, can you flip on district-wide some of the additional features? For example, the students participating couldn't share a Google presentation in a Google Hangout. They couldn't share a Google Doc. So as they were having the conversation, the students weren't able to pull the evidence of or what they wanted to communicate. So that was kind of a hang up, but they may have fixed that. So hopefully that's a good thing. All right. This is exactly why it's a lot more fun when there are five of you in the room with me and I'm not in here by myself recording a conversation. I'm going to let you continue this rich discussion. I promise I will stop talking and connect to your connections as well. But I want to frame our conversation that the work we're doing this evening in this discussion is intentionally backwards planned, that we're really looking for the perspective in the communication, and as we collaborate with others, influences a learner's interpretation of the information. And because I've just had an incredible day with young Zhao, and David and Michelle helped me with this, because he said something today, well, and it might have been in the next session. We had another group meeting with young Zhao, and he said real learning occurs when a learner changes their paradigm, when we take in new understanding. So this idea that we can teach anything, he was challenging us a little bit, and he said that it's a little audacious that we think we can teach you. It's not until you have learned it and internalized it and own it for yourself, have you really learned something. So my telling you about something isn't actually you learning it until you have internalized it and processed it. So I think this enduring understanding is really important. um, I'd love for you to connect as you see this, and I'm being intentional about this, that when we start with our learning in our schools, we don't blow by these enduring understandings. Stop and use them to say, knowing that our topic today is going to be about communication and collaboration digitally. Uh, is this the right enduring understanding? What does it mean to you, this perspective? Obviously, you have to be collaborating with others. And I wonder what it looks like if you've collaborated with the students in your class. Deb, you gave us an example of your students at Soaring. I think you're at Saddle Ranch. Sorry, I almost said the wrong school. So, the perspective of your students that have been learning together all through a year, and now you add the cyber school, who may not have the same sense of community with the same group of students. Maybe they're more open to collaborating and communicating with others. That's an interesting perspective to have your learners that may have an ongoing community and relationship with the 30 students in their classroom versus the online students. And how does that influence their interpretation, their understanding of what they're learning? So um, I think, the experience that Deb has could be different than Michelle sharing with us her experience of using the Google Hangout. And in that case, I'm not sure if you brought in an expert or you brought in other voices to the conversation, but I know the use of the fishbowl and the outer circle I've often given in our examples is that there was a Littleton High School teacher who was teaching To Kill a Mockingbird. And she did it the first time with just her 40 students in the classroom, had the inner circle talking, outer circle blogging, but she took it to the next level. This next year, she had told some teachers about this. She had a friend in another state. And this time, that friend said, well, I would like to pair my 40 students in another high school with your students and see what happens to the dialogue when we bring in different perspectives from different regional areas, from different socioeconomics, from different background knowledges. Um, so to bring in that perspective really changed the discussion about some of the big topics that happen in To Kill a Mockingbird. So I hope that's helpful. We're going to continue on here and make sure that our essential question is, why is it important to have a variety of communication and collaboration opportunities to support all learners? So I'm not blowing through this one either. I need you all to help me with this. Why is it important? Why wouldn't we just all use Google Docs and call it a day? Why have the collaborative brainstorming tools like a Mind 42? Why do we use that one? Why use, I'm trying to think, Prezi? That's a collaborative tool. Why use Edmodo that allows you to form a group with another classroom? Why use these different tools? And I've named a variety. Why use Twitter? I have Meg Blaze over at Mountain Vista High School, an English teacher, saying that she does her lit discussions using a Twitter hashtag for her classes. So if she teaches the same course several times, that way the hashtag, even though the 30, 40 kids in her classroom, now she's got maybe 120 students discussing a piece of literature. Um, so why the variety? What do you think? David saying pick the tool that fits the purpose. So I agree with you, David. So she may choose Twitter with a hashtag that isn't open to the world. She's willing to create a collaborative learning experience with 120 kids. She's not ready to open it up and invite um, other classrooms, for an example. So the one about Edmodo, if I form a group or find a project in a community that I want to collaborate with some teachers in Florida, and I'm thinking of Christy Lathrop over at Mesa Middle School, a seventh and eighth grade science teacher. The first year she was working on energy use, sustainable energy, and she did more like what I gave as an example that Meg Blaze did. She connected some of her sessions, so she's taught the same science for a couple of groups, and she combined 75 students in a similar discussion, but all from Mesa Middle School, all from the same region. The next year she extended the sustainable energy conversation, and she used a collaborative tool. At that time, Ning was free, Ning. It's no longer free for educators. Um, or maybe it is for educators, but there's a fee for industry. We'd have to check on the Ning site. But basically, you could do a Google site and you get the same value. She extended it. She had a teacher and students from Kentucky, so that brought a different perspective of energy in their area. And then she connected with someone outside of the United States, another teacher in a classroom that she had. So all of a sudden, the tool, she had to use the right tool, and a Twitter isn't going to be where they were going to be sharing their projects, their conversations. They needed a collaborative learning space. So for her, she went from a Ning, and if that's no longer available, we have wiki spaces that are free, and we have in our district really good use of Google Sites that could help too. So I'm going to take one more from the back channel. Let's see, I did one from David. Deb, when we use real world activities and the students are engaged, differentiation seems to happen naturally. So then it's about, I'll combine those two ideas. David saying you pick the right tool for the learning, but I hear Deb saying you also pick the right tool for the learner. So if the teacher isn't so prescriptive of we all make a PowerPoint, all of a sudden, if David has an interest in infographics, he may go and research how do you create one of those and do it. And what I really think the challenge for us is to support our colleagues with the idea that a teacher could give a list of them the same way a teacher would say it's okay for you to do a diorama, you can do a mobile to like the solar system, you could do a model of it, you can but could on that list of options for the products that we choose to create to show our learning, and I apologize, um, I'm going to connect this again to Young Zhao's World Class Learners. He talks about product based learning, and that in the product is in the creation of your idea and your synthesis of your understanding. I think that's also where you get a lot of communication, and it can give affordance to some collaboration opportunities as well. Um, so this idea that we match the right tools to the learning, to what you want to do with it, to the purpose, and also to the learning style. If I'm very visual, I may want to go with that infographic. If somebody else is very expressive and wants to talk through it, they may choose to do something like a Glogster, which is visual and you can record your voice, or you can insert a video. So you have different tools for the different purposes and learning styles. So, Russell, welcome. I'm wondering about how one could use Vine for learning. Maybe have the students, all 30 in the room, say one concept they learned in class today. I need help with the same as David. We both need to know what Vine is. So we're going to watch the back channel on that. And I'm going to keep moving. I think you guys did a great job with that essential question of connecting um, the purpose and differentiating for learning styles. Really, really good conversation. So our outcomes for this evening would be that you as participants will be able to design learning opportunities that incorporate communication and collaboration with digital tools. And our evidence of that, the outcome would be that you are intentional in your backwards plan. And where we really see the use of the digital tools is in well, it could be in two places. Predominantly, where we are looking for world class learning, the evidence of it would be in stage three, as you design those learning opportunities for students and you give a variety of opportunities for a student to share their knowledge and depth of knowledge as well, the tools can be a part of the options. And I think it goes back to that menu of choices that whether we're doing project based learning and constructivist understanding of what we know, um, could at least, what I just see not happen is that it just isn't an option. You know, my own kids would come home with the same list of learning um, evidence that I was given. You can write a report, you could do that tri-fold, the big science project poster kind of thing. You can present that way. You could do a mobile, you can do a diorama, you can do all kinds of things, but the list never included the options of digital tools. And teachers don't have to know how to make an infographic. They could just link to, there's probably, if we Google it, how do you make an infographic? There's probably some great tutorials on it. I remember when teachers were hot on QR codes, that was a way to share your knowledge and have it be mobile and people could get the information off of QR codes. There are great websites that any student could listen to a video and learn how to make a QR code. So um, this is where I'm wondering, Vine is awesome. Russell, I still think we need more information. Is there a link about this Vine? Because I think, let's see, this is Google about Vine. This is from Vine is a mobile app that thanks, David's already doing his own research. See, Russell, we didn't get enough information from you. It's a mobile app that enables its users to create and post short video clips. That's awesome because that whole thing of video is one of the most effective ways to communicate and to collaborate with others. I mean, obviously, the YouTube thing is a great example of how it's impacted the music world. It's impacted all kinds of things. People go on there to learn how to fix things in their house. It's problem solving, it's sharing and communicating and collaborating. But how do you put it up there is, some people aren't comfortable with it. So having another tool and making it work on a mobile app is huge. So yeah, thanks, David. Russell just shared now a link for us so we can see some examples there. Great. All right, so now we're on to how are we going to measure what we're doing? And how do we have a reference to discuss this? So in the back channel, your comfort, your knowledge, with this model that I'm sharing here is the SAMR. I'm going to share a link for resources, and something I've added to it is it's really helpful for me. There's an article where the author who created the SAMR model gives examples of what we're looking for. How do we know when we are moving from enhancement of good learning instruction, and those are the two bottom states, that the tech has been a substitution or an augmentation, into more of a transformation of learning, which is going to take a modification of the learning opportunity or a redefinition. So what do those look like? What would be some rockin' examples so that we can start to say, where are we in this progression of technology use? So I'm going to go grab my SAMR resources and put these as a link in the back channel so you all have them. I just want to make it a tiny URL, and I really appreciate the folks here who have been using tiny URLs. I think it's easier to share things, which is awesome. So actually, if you're in Google Chrome, this is just a tech tip, but there's an add-on. They call them on, if you do Google add-ons, there's one that is a shortens URLs, and it's super fast. So when you're in a Google browser, there, I just sent you um, SAMR measure resources. Oh, and that's my daughter Lauren in the background with her blue t-shirt. She's um, getting her books for studying some stuff tonight. So she's good. Let's see. All right, so I just shared with you SAMR. So comfort, let's see. David says it's a great, I agree with you, David. It's a great way to frame where are we at. And I'll give you the fast version. So if what you have done with technology is take a worksheet or something you would have done in class that's a traditional answer these questions and you put it in a Google form, but all you're asking the students to do is basically a worksheet. You've substituted something that you did with paper and pencil, and there's not really a functional change. There's no collaboration, and there's not a new purpose to it. So that's one example, is that a teacher might have, a best example would be on a teacher's website, they link to a resource. And it doesn't matter if David and I use it, it doesn't matter if Russell and I are in the dot collaborating, we're just going to get information. So it's the same as if I handed you an article to read. Augmentation is that the technology, so this is that idea where I said give the list of choices, and if at least I've augmented the ways that a child can express, collaborate, and communicate, will communicate what they know and understand. So if the choice is it's okay for Russell to use Prezi, and the teacher doesn't even have to give it, they could just say any Web 2.0 tool, here's an example of them, and list out 10. But as long as you have it pre-approved with the teacher, you're going to use this tool, great. Share what you know, because what I care about is your message, your thinking, your depth of knowledge, how well you communicate it. And I don't really care what tool you use. So yes, we could use Vine and you could put your video up there and we've augmented the lesson. So that means we've used technology to enhance learning. Where we get into modification is when we start to see the technology creating a task redesign. So this would be an example where a teacher has put some either a video in Edmodo and then asked the students over the next 3 days have a conversation about this topic we're studying. We're going to look at colonization. And I want you to look around the world today. Here's a video to watch about what it looks like, what it is. Here's an article to read about colonization in Africa and how new communities are formed. And now I want you to connect and look around in Douglas County. Are there any examples of cliques or groups in our social arena that we can see and personalize it? But the kids are going to have this conversation, and we've done it in Edmodo in a social learning way. We have completely redesigned that task so that it is a new experience. The way to get to the highest level or a new level, I don't know if it's, I don't think it should have a ranking, but what would truly transform the learning more is if we get to this idea that we redefine the task, and the author of SAMR is intentional about saying it needs a global connection. So when we hear at Rock Canyon High School that Shawnee Fordham biotech students have now gone out and emailed and asked researchers around the world to Skype with their class and have conversations using video conferencing, and they start to connect the science experiments they're doing on mice and plants and all the genetics that they're working with, and they start to connect their work with what's happening in the labs around the world and hear from scientists who care about their thinking and also say, hey, the way that we do our research science notebooks is the same way Shawnee is having the students in the high school classroom. They said it took on a whole new relevance to the learning, and that is not something I ever experienced in high school. So give some examples of anything you have. If you have any links, if you want to share any examples in, oh, great. So I always stop and take a look at the back channel because you are on fire. Russell's asking, does Twitter have the ability to redefine? So I'll give you an example from Young Zhao today. A teacher in the United States had her students read World Class Learning, and they had to do some analysis of the topics in his book. And one of the things a student took issue with that Young Zhao said, I have to think of the topic. It was outsourcing. So the student said, and found him on Twitter because Young Zhao has a presence on Twitter, and said, "Are you looking for that textbook? It was on the floor somewhere. Sorry, I'm trying to help Lauren for a second." Um, uh, so Young Zhao said the student found him on Twitter and said, I don't agree with you. If we outsource, I know where the students were in Michigan because they said this isn't right. We have people all over Michigan losing their jobs. And Young Zhao said, "Yeah, yes, I understand that." And he said, "Well, it's not fair because our jobs are being outsourced to China." And Young Zhao said, "Yes, and they have people who live there and need jobs too, right?" And he went on to say, they had this rich dialogue and back and forth in Twitter. So you want to talk a redesign? When can you bring in experts that you or I, as kids, ever had a chance to have a discussion, a meaningful, authentic discussion with an author, with a thought leader who will answer your questions? And Young Zhao, I don't think, is actually that unique in this. I think artists, musicians, authors are often willing to have, they want to have real. They don't want it to feel like they did it for the assignment. They want to have real discussions with our students, and they can smell it just like our kids can if it's a false or a fake assignment. Do it for the paragraph. If it's real and those students care about it, you can have some really amazing learning occur. So Young Zhao said at the end of 30 minutes, the student said, "Okay, I give up. You have completely changed my thinking about outsourcing." And Young Zhao said he did it all through re- giving back questions to the student. So as he would hear the cognitive dissonance, he would say, "So you think," and then he would ask, "Is that right?" or "Why?" And all of a sudden, that's when he saw the new learning occur. When that student made a shift in their thinking, he could see that student truly understanding outsourcing. So that's my story on the idea of Twitter being a redesign. All right. So I want to get us into a couple of examples of resources that we can design highly effective digital communication. And I think the big thing here, I want you to give any examples you have about authentic audience. So the communication, I kind of remember 3 years ago when blogs became really popular. I'm going to give you 5 years ago in our district. Some of you may have experienced the podcast revolution. Everything was, "Do you podcast? Are you podcasting?" And then I felt like blogs became a big deal. And like all good learning, when we learned something new, we overused it until we really understood what it was, its power, its purpose, the intentionality. And now I feel like it becomes one of the tools that we may use in communication. So, blogs and podcasting are examples, but how do we design it to be highly effective? And I'm going to go back to the example we just talked about with Twitter and Young Zhao sharing that authenticity, the genuineness of the purpose. So, are your students putting up a blog and pontificating about what they think, but they don't have anybody following them? Or they aren't having a rich exchange of ideas. There's a very big difference. And when blogs first came on, I heard people look at them and say, "Well, it's just people spouting stuff." And now I'm hearing a difference of new communications because of blogs. And um, as you're thinking about where your students are going to communicate, I think we have to go back to the same thing we started with. And yes, Russell, Ben Wilkoff is a great example of using effective digital communication. Um, so he's got a new thing going, Russell, that he calls vlogging. It's video blogging. And he actually has a great example of, thank you for sharing the YouTube channel for the vlogging. There's a group of students around the world that started to process their learning and um, just talking about big issues, and they're willing to share their video blogs throughout the year as they process and share. Ben also shares another one, uh, where a first year teacher, I think it's in the UK, is vlogging or about his experience, and it starts out and it's almost heart-wrenching because he feels so lonely and isolated, and all of a sudden, Ben finds him and says, "Hey, why don't you join this group?" And now he has a group of about 60. But it takes some, and I want you to tell us, what are some of the criteria that make it authentic and continue going. It takes someone in there, like a Ben, who continues to make connections between the different people. So Ben talks about that, in the group is that first year teacher. He has a woman who's a grandma who's retired from teaching, but Ben loves her vlogging about education because she's so passionate about it and she still has so much wisdom to share. And so all of a sudden, it's about community and it goes to authenticity and how you want to share. So now we've got this idea that Russell shared Vine with us about, um, a way to share our videos. And now we've got this new idea of authentic audience and vlogging, and Ben Wilkoff's example. I'm going to share my screen and take us out to some. I'm going to go back to authentic audience and purpose. So as we start to get connected, I have a couple: random kid and student launcher. That might be some resources to help you connect your students as well to some real um, relevant topics that students might be interested in. So as I share my screen, I won't be able to see the back channel, but I'm not worried about any of you because you are prolific. So I'm gonna let the conversation keep going, and I share my desktop, and I have my resources here. So one of the, let's see, I have a couple things open. So let me get reorganized because one of the things I needed, I did lose. All right. Actually, I had it open over here. So student launcher, and if you have any experience with this one, share it with us, tell us how it works for you. But it's the quest to matter, and the idea is that we've got 2 million students around the world. And hang on one second, I have to step away. Just one second, I have to let my dog out. So I'm going to play just a bit of this video, and let me know if you can't hear anything, but I want you to just get a sense of what Quest to Matter is.
Dear world, I want you to know I matter. You can expect great things from me. I am on a mission. I am smart. I am kind. I am somebody. I am ready for tomorrow. I'm creating the future. I am the future. You matter to my mission. Are you ready to help me change the world?
All right, so that's enough to get you hooked. It is free to join. You can find a school in here. There's project goals, and I just think it might be one you want to explore a little bit. And it might be a place that your students could find existing quests and ways that they can feel. And again, Young Zhao talked about this today as well, is that our kids feel powerless in a lot of sense, and they feel that they don't have a voice in what matters, and that we don't ask them to create their uh, their learning. And so there's this sense of doing it for the sake of school and for a grade that doesn't have direct relevant meaning to them. So that this one might be a place you want to, and it talks about crowdsourcing, that this is a place that they're going to share their projects. The other one I found very interesting is during Katrina. She was 10 years old at the time, and when she saw the devastation that Katrina had on the region, she said, I need to make a difference in the world. And so she set out to raise $1 million to help the people and set up a website, and she surpassed her goal. And what businesses around the world said is that there is a power in our students to solve real world problems. She's now 18 years old, and she is part of this company that works with partnering businesses and our students, and it's the power of anyone to make a difference. So they have a quick how it works. It begins with you. Same idea that we matter and we can make a difference. Um, we connect you with others. So now we have this authentic place to collaborate and communicate. And together you rock the planet. Together we're pooling ideas, resources, and you can solve real world problems. So when we talk about a world class education for our students, here are two examples. And I'm going to come back to see what you're all sharing, because I wonder if obviously a couple of you have already seen this, and you were saying, does anyone have questions about it? Anything? So I want to come back to our discussion here and see what you're thinking about this. So yes, you've seen these two resources. If you've used them, share with us how they work. Are they worthy of sharing with other teachers? Um, what questions do we have? So David, you're connecting to Zhao's entrepreneurial concept is about this, and making and remaking ourselves through our careers. And we actually had young Zhao as our keynote. He joined us virtually in January for the Ed Tech conference. And we asked him, because I hear this from teachers say, time out. Are you saying that every unit that I plan is supposed to be like a mini business, and that my students are all about making money? And he was very clear. That is not what he means by entrepreneur. When he talks about an entrepreneurial spirit, it's that empowering of every person to know they matter and they can make a difference. It's about the risk taking, and it can be socially engaging. It doesn't have to mean that we are starting mini businesses, and that every unit we co-create with our students is about creating a business model. But if we take another step to it, it could be about having our students design the project and learn about project management skills that are transferable to any career they would live in, they would engage in. Um, I'm trying to think, there was another example. So let me see what else. Resiliency and courage, totally agree with that. Michelle, I think people get stuck on the term entrepreneur. I agree with you, Michelle. And I think that if we could have these discussions about, it's really talking about, I love your words, relevancy, purpose, choice. I used the idea of personalization, and that uh, it's about topics that matter to us. So yeah, we're all in agreement here. Okay, so anything about Random Kid? Has anybody looked into this? Had you heard about it? Does it seem like something you might want to explore? So I'm doing a temperature check, and as well as Random Kid, interest, no interest, student launcher, the quest to matter. um, I'm looking for, do you have experience? Are you interested in it? Uh, Great question. Michelle, I haven't heard about it. Is it geared toward elementary? Okay, so um, on Random Kid, it is not geared to elementary. It is K-20. I think it goes post college. The young girl who started it, she was a Random Kid, and now industries have partnered with her, and she now owns this business, or it's part of. She is part of the team that decide when to fund projects. So your students may say you want a garden, and that you're going to raise the food to give to the local food bank, but here's what you need for money. You need a fence so the bunnies don't get in there. You need hoeing and some different tools. You need the seed money, all of that. You need some packaging money, and but you're gonna see a direct impact on our local homeless community and low income. And if the students presented their it sounds like a business plan, but it could just be a project plan. Then what Random Kid does is decide who to fund. And if nothing else, here's my other caveat. Even if you look in that site and you don't want to use it, here's your other lens. Are there existing projects that you would bring back and just use as planting the seeds for your students and your educators for what's possible? And then I've been using these three words. Would you take what you see in there and adopt it? Flat out, yep, there's somebody doing the gardening thing, and I may not be able to get the money for it, but we can do that in our school. It's something we want to do regardless if we get funded through here. Would you adopt it? Would you adapt it? So you might see what you might do it as a hook to the kids, because on the shoulder of giants, we create new innovation. If they go in and they look at 10 projects, would they adapt it and change it and make it their own and go off and do it? Or third, is there a way to innovate it? So all of a sudden you look at 10 and your mind starts to synthesize, and then you bring something new to the project, and all of a sudden you have a new innovation of the learning. So look at it through a couple different lens. You might just go in there and it becomes just a background resource. Same thing I would say with the Quest to Matter. All right. So the next two, let me do the temperature check before I start. And this one, the two I wanted to share with you, one is called the Independent Project. Again, it's going to be a resource that your students can go to. There's a great video on there, by the way. Their site is just really well designed, very clean and simple to use. In the Independent Project, again, your students are the drivers of the learning and the purpose of what they're going to do. Infographics I just put in because I thought I just didn't want to miss that there are visual ways to communicate, and so often we think of the video, the podcast, the blog, and if not infographics, I'm wondering about Instagrams, and if that you've seen anything being done with that as well. So before I start these two, I need to know from you your knowledge, and you're going to answer two things. Um, New to infographics, used infographics or Instagram, you're going to tell me the level that you know about it, and new or have experience with independent projects. So I know how far to go, or if we just need kind of an intro. So Russell, you're asking for a list of some of these resources, and I absolutely will. I'd be happy to follow up and provide those for you. You saw that I went to a Google Doc, and I'll share it with all of you. As I come across these sites or I share them with others, I've been adding to them based on what other people are sharing. So in there, I call it global. I think it's called collaboration and global projects, because I want a bank of these that I can go to that help me. We hear these big ideas from like Young Zhao, and as soon as people, like, we didn't grow up with this, it wasn't part of our education, and all of a sudden we're supposed to redesign our teaching and be effective. And where I thought I might be a master teacher, all of a sudden now I feel like a novice again, because this is a completely different way of instruction. So what I hear from teachers is I need to see some models and to have some guided structure to be at least effective if I'm going to use challenge-based learning, or if I'm going to move in this direction of constructivism. And this isn't something I've been doing in my classroom. I try to collect these types of projects. Okay, so Michelle's Comfort loves infographics, but some of the free tools can be a little, it sounds like, tricky for students to use. I think, is it that the tools are hard for creating them, Michelle? If that's the idea, I don't think they're tricky. Okay, so definitely there might be some resources I can share then about infographics. And then the independent project, when I put it up, I thought David made a comment about, oh, how cool independent project is. So, uh, oh, Michelle, that there's a consistency in the look. They kind of have the chunk of visuals. They usually have some data or graphs in there, and then just kind of a big bullet. I'll give you an example that I thought it worked really well. Sani is the principal for the online EDCSD school, and she had to be out of town. She said, "Can you facilitate a discussion with my lead educators in online learning? And could you please use this infographic on blended learning?" And the part I liked was the chunks of information and how we used it to guide our conversation. So we had 10 minutes to kind of look through it. And then what I saw people do was right away connect to some of the data that was out there, or they had cited some examples of different types of successful blended learning and online learning. And it actually, you know what it reminded me of? Remember when Wordle was really big and people would see the big word splash? Anything that is a deeper, richer, more authentic conversation starter seems to be a great place to go. Instead of the teacher giving the info, that visual actually sparked 20 different amazing discussions, and we put them into a back channel and collected notes and resources, and it led everybody kind of left the room feeling like they wanted to keep the conversation going, and they wanted to um, uh, do more research. And they also, actually, the other irony was they came out with some goals for themselves as a school and for their personal, what could they do personally to get to them. So the irony is online learning is actually not 100% online. The goal and the research is saying students still need about 25% of face to face. And so they estimated they were about 10% face to face, and they set a goal to move toward the 25%. And over the next year, they were going to collect some data to see how much and did it improve the success rates of students in online learning to successfully complete their classes and to learn effectively. And then the other way is true. We're seeing blended learning in the classroom. In our traditional, Russell might have 75% of his time face to face with those students, but is he balancing in the guide is 25% of modular online that allows for some differentiated extensions or remediation in online learning. So it's actually kind of an interesting thing that in the end, somebody made a comment that someday we'll look back at this and it'll all be just learning, and it'll include 50% of both, or it'll include the right amount for the learner. So for some learners, it might be either way, but we're going to get it down so well that it'll just be called learning and it won't be blended or online or any of that. All right, so I'm going to go and share the here's Kathy Schrock's Guide to Everything for Infographics. So Michelle, I don't know if you've been here, but I felt like a lot of these resources she gives, like creating an infographic down here, these might be the place that some of your students might want to take a look at um, and share. I'll share this link with you in the back channel. Hang on one second, so you can have this. And okay, sent that one out. And then so I just wanted you to know that she also shows a great video, and I know I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to just do the other site I had shared. Shoot, I just drew a blank on which one I had put on there. Hang on one second. I'm going to combine just one more idea because I have something else that I can share. So I just gave you the one with Kathy Schrock. Her video is awesome. So anything that resource is one you can explore. And let me combine my last two other resources, and then we'll get it wrapped up here in the next couple minutes. I hope this was helpful because, oh, the independent project. I just drew a blank on which one I had been talking about. And I don't want to miss these for collaboration tools. So in your back channel, please do not miss, if you are anywhere with science, STEM, engineering, and math, Edmodo and I are going to present at the Mortgage Fair Share this Saturday, and they have a teacher in Hawaii has set up a Edmodo group to collaborate with other educators on global projects that support STEM. And they are inviting any educator, every educator, to join them. So I say give it a try and see what you think of it. I'd love to get your feedback on it, and so if you go in there and join it, that would be interesting. There is also in Edmodo an educator from Hawaii as well, who does challenge-based learning, and she has a great article in there. So I'll share those resources with you. ePails is one that we may have talked about in the past, but what I again look for are they've really done a nice job with um, adding existing projects that people can join. And so that's a great one. About 3 years ago in Douglas County, we did some work with Thinkfinity. They have pre created projects, or you can submit a project and put it out there. So there is a project in there. Some third graders in Wisconsin partnered with some students in Singapore. And the passion topic they were interested in is how do you stop bullying? And so what it's project based, and it's a platform where all the projects are shared. The one piece I don't see is that a little bit like challenge based learning. If you go to their site, there's not a way for us to continually engage in it. Like in Edmodo, when you join that group, you could form a group with some other teachers and the learning can be ongoing. You can continue to participate. I see these as a short time, and the project and what the students created are on there. But if you're at that point for what does this look like? What are students creating? What is the process they went through? And how would a teacher support learners doing this? I think these are three great examples of where you would go. And I think, yeah, so that'll take me out. I have 2 minutes for any questions, and I guess I didn't get to show you those, but the resources on the last page, Thinkfinity, Thinkfinity. Let's see, we just talked a little bit about independent project. So I know you want these resources, and ePails. We'll just put those in the back channel. What about the local paper Highlands Ranch Herald donating a page for middle school voices? Each week a student would have their writing highlighted. I definitely know they have student, um, what do you say? I thought they had a part in there that had the student voices, but I wasn't sure if they did middle school. And actually, the Denver Post always had that student section as well. And Russell, I think you're onto it. Where can we find authentic places that our kids are contributing to real conversations and they get published and they have ongoing dialogue? In the EdTech Academy last week, Michelle Lynn at Fox Creek Elementary shared this story. She has a student who started her blog, and it was all about what she was reading and what she liked about it, what she didn't like. And one thing they did, and she had learned this at Geek Camp last summer, is how to put in a gadget of the world so that as people join your blog and contribute, it puts a dot. And that sixth grade student has people blogging with her about the book she's reading from Australia. Every day or every week, I guess, she comes in to talk to the tech teacher and is like, look who's on my blog now. Look who is having a conversation with me about these books. And so that student is just getting naturally reinforced that about her ideas and her passion about reading. So I think as much as we can, look for those genuine, authentic learning opportunities that support your students. Thank you all for joining me. I'm glad you were here for our discussion. This is the last EdTech webinar, and this one was about communication and collaboration using digital tools and how to effectively use them. I hope I have sparked some ideas for you that you may go and some people leave feeling a little overwhelmed, like it was a lot of ideas. Just take one. What's one thing that you might go and just explore a little further and try? So leave with setting a goal of one thing, and then don't worry about all of them. This is a busy time and there's lots to explore. Geek Camp will happen again this year, and it will be for PGI credit. It will be July 8th through the 12th. So It is a great relaxed opportunity. So come to camp this summer and learn with and from your colleagues. We'll make it very interactive and hands-on and product-based. As Young Zhao challenges us to do with our students, let's start with adult learning and practice what we're